So UFC 315 is this weekend, and in the main event, we have Belal Muhammad versus Jack Della Maddalena JDM for that welterweight strap itself. I'm going to go through this fight and give you my prediction on who I think will win. Now, I know earlier in the week I made a prayer video for JDM, so I might be a little bit biased here, but what I'm going to do with that bias is take a nice little pen, a piece of paper, write it down, crumble it up, and throw it in the trash because my bias is not going to go through in this video. So let's talk about JDM versus Belal Muhammad. Now, JDM in the past, right? We saw his Basil Hafez fight. We saw him versus Gilbert Burns as well. This guy is kind of open to being taken down. Now, here's a little bit of an asterisk with the Basil Hafez fight. I think Basil Hafez was making his UFC debut. JDM was on double weight cut. Like he cut weight earlier in the week for another fight that got pulled out. Then it got moved to next week, and then Basil Hafez filled in on short notice. I think that version of JDM was not the best version of JDM. And in that fight, I think he actually could have stuffed Basil Hafez's takedowns. It's just the fact that he pulled guillotines nonstop, and that was just kind of ruining him and putting him on bottom. So in theory, I don't think that Basil Hafez fight is a true showing of JDM's takedown defense. I know it looked shoddy in there. I know he was on bottom for a good portion of that fight, but I think mainly it was just him pulling stupid guillotines. And now IQ might be a factor into this fight. Maybe JDM's IQ is not the best because that Basil Hafez fight showed very, very low IQ. I won't even lie to you. But I do think as time has gone on, that fight was what, maybe a couple years ago now? It was a very long time ago. I don't think that that fight truly is going to define what JDM is now. Back then, maybe, but now, not so much. And honestly, even in those moments versus Basil Hafez, JDM still looked good on the feet, looked great on the feet. Just that Basil Hafez is just, dude, I think he was just on something, man. Like he might have actually been on some sort of cycle because that version of Basil Fez has not even come close to the version that he showed in his other UFC fights. He looked considerably worse in other performances, but against JDM, he looked amazing. So I think there was something on the line maybe for Basil Fez. Maybe it was short notice. Maybe he was on a cycle. He looked way in better shape than he did for his other UFC fights. So I'm kind of taking that Basil Hafez fight and kind of tossing it to the side here. And I want to really focus on the Gilbert Burns performance, where he did get taken down at moments. Overall, he was taken down, what, 3, 5, 7 times against Gilbert Burns. He was controlled for 5 minutes of that fight. So basically, a whole round, he was controlled throughout all 3 rounds. But overall, man, I think that performance versus Gilbert Burns gives me some level of hope versus Belal Muhammad. I really do think that JDM can go out there and do something. Now, I think that when we saw Belal Muhammad versus Leon Edwards, it did kind of seem like that maybe Belal has kind of upped his game even still. I think that was the best Belal Muhammad performance that he's had so far in the UFC versus Leon Edwards. He went out there and I think he showed a very high level grappling game. So in my opinion, I do think Belal has better grappling than Gilbert Burns right now. Maybe Gilbert Burns could still beat a Leon Edwards who seems like he just quits, but that's kind of the thing, man. Once Edwards gets taken down a couple times, he kind of falls back and feels sorry for himself. I know he beat Usman, but that was honestly, you could argue that's a fluke KO versus Usman. And then we just saw Edwards versus Brady, and Brady just pretty much dominated him on the ground as well. I just don't know where Leon is mentally in his fights sometimes. And I think once he gets taken down a couple times, I think he kind of accepts the loss for what it is. Like, oh man, I'm getting taken down. I just can't win. I don't think JDM's the same kind of guy who will just lie down and let it happen because even against Gilbert Burns, when Burns was taking him down quite consistently, in the 3rd round, we saw JDM like still go for it, still try to win, still try to like have that dog in him. I don't think Edwards has that dog in him like a JDM will have. I think JDM, if things go very sour, if things go very bad for him and he's getting taken down and controlled, I do have belief that in the 3rd, 4th, 5th round, there will still be some chances for JDM to try to put that dog in him and go after Belal Muhammad. Now, will Belal still have his moments? Of course, I think overall in this fight, I do expect him to be the one kind of controlling the pace, be the one pressuring forward, especially early. I can see Bilal Muhammad kind of disrespecting the power of JDM and trying to get him on the back foot and then control him, get him against the cage, take him down at moments, kind of stall the fight out like a normal Bilal Muhammad fight, just kind of stall it out. Hopefully JDM doesn't pull any guillotines. That's my biggest like question. I know he's been working on his grappling game, of course, for this fight. I know he's been expecting Bilal to go for takedowns, but sometimes the guillotine might be a natural thing that he does that he's not really thinking about. Maybe in training camp, maybe in practice, his guillotine is just nasty, but I don't think the guillotine will be successful versus Bilal Muhammad at all. I think it has one of the lowest success rates in the UFC by submission. I think the first one is Kimura, which has like a 6% success rate, and then it's guillotine with like 14%. I think guillotines just don't generally work in high level MMA. It just doesn't work. I think if you fight a guy like who's unranked and like making the UFC debut, maybe a guillotine will work, but I feel like the majority of the time, guillotines just don't really ever follow through with a submission. I just think it takes too much time to put somebody out. For the most part, people don't go out the guillotines, so just tap from the pain. I think that if you're a disciplined fighter and you know how to escape a guillotine and fight the hands, move off to the side, get into side control, or half guard to per se, I think it's very, very easy to escape a guillotine. It's more of, I think, a mental submission than it is like an actual blood choke. Now, it can put you out. We've seen fighters get put out by guillotine, but for the most part, just an arm and guillotine, I don't think has a very high success rate. And I think it's just a very, very dumb thing to pull at times, unless like you can use it to get back up to your feet. Only way somebody should be pulling a guillotine is to potentially get into full mount or to get back up to their feet, use it as a threat to make sure they don't get their arms or hands locked up and where they get put on their back and they stay on their back. I think a guillotine should be used as a way to get back up to your feet or reverse a position, not a fight ending thing that you want to commit to. But getting back to JDM versus Burns, only got taken down 7 times, which still is kind of a lot, but he wasn't on bottom for a crazy amount of time. He was only on bottom for 115 in the first round, 139 in the second round, and 213 in the third round. And he went out there, had that dog in him, and he won the fight by finishing the third round. Like, JDM still has that dog in him. I don't think he's very low IQ. He was still outstriking Burns for the second and third round. I think we can see a similar thing versus Bilal Muhammad, who will be probably having success early. But I think as soon as JDM lands something, like, because he will land a body shot, he will land a hook, he will land a straight right, he will land some sort of punch that I think will gain respect from Bilal Muhammad. And we won't see Bilal as eager to kind of pour it on as he typically does. Like when he fought Sean Brady, he was all up in his face, just landing punches, and Sean Brady just couldn't take it. Even against Leon Edwards, he's always in Edwards' face, never giving him a breath or any space whatsoever. I don't think that he can perform that as well against those guys as against JDM, right? Because I don't think Edwards has, this crazy amount of KO power. In fact, he doesn't. And of course, Sean Brady doesn't as well. JDM does. JDM has enough power to put anybody away at welterweight right now. And I think as soon as he lands clean on Bilal Muhammad, I don't think Bilal is going to be as confident doing his super pressure heavy style, always in your face, no breaks whatsoever during the round. I'm just constantly throwing punches. I'm constantly hit scanning you. I'm always doing whatever I can to score points, whether with the hands or on the ground, stalling fights out. I don't think that will be a successful style for long in this fight. Maybe in the first round it might be good. Maybe in the second it might be good, but I think as soon as JDM cracks him with something, because he will land something at some point, I think he will kind of respect that and not be as aggressive as we typically see a Bilal Muhammad be. And I think as soon as JDM gains that level of respect, we're going to see Bilal lean more on the grappling and not much with the hands. And at that point, that's where I kind of lose faith in Bilal Muhammad. Now, can he go out there and just ragdoll him and hold him down for 5 rounds, win by decision? Of course, with Bilal Muhammad, he makes fights boring. He can make this fight completely boring and win by a boring decision. However, I do think JDM will take more advantage of the moments where Bilal Muhammad is not doing any damage and just holding him against the cage, where if they do separate, we will see JDM land something. He won't just sit back like a Oliveira versus Islam and be very tentative with his hands. I think he'll go for something. I think he knows in the moments where maybe I'm down in this round because of the grappling, let's do some damage to get this round back on my side. I think JDM will have that mindset going into this fight. If there is any time on the feet and Bilal respects his striking and his power, we will see JDM go out there and do more damage in the round rounds where Belal does pretty much nothing. Now, I think in this fight, these rounds will be close. There won't be a clear cut, oh, JDM won this round, Belal Muhammad won this round. There might be a couple for each of them in there, but I think the majority of the fight, we will have debatable rounds in this matchup. And I think this is where maybe the judges get it wrong, maybe they get it right, but I do think we're going to see JDM get more rounds or debated rounds than Belal Muhammad in this matchup. I think we're going to see Belal come out in the first round and win that pretty clearly. Just the constant pressure. Maybe JDM hurts him so he can get the round, but I think if JDM doesn't hurt Belal at any moment in the first round, it most likely will be a Belal Muhammad round. Now you might be thinking to yourself, well, JDM should win the early rounds, but I think as this fight goes on, Belal should have more success. I think the opposite, actually. Now, JDM can gas, maybe. That could be a possibility, and maybe the later rounds do go to Belal because JDM just can't keep up with the pace. But I do think we're going to see kind of a flip-floppage in this matchup. I think as this fight goes on, I'm kind of low-key trusting JDM more. If this fight goes on to the third, fourth round, I do think JDM has chances, like, do kind of rise a little bit. I don't think this fight is just, oh, if JDM doesn't KO Belal in the first round, it's definitely a Belal win. I do think this fight is going to be very highly competitive. We're going to see JDM have that dog in him and grind out a fight with Belal. He will separate at times and do damage in those moments. He won't be tentative. He will try to land body shots and headshots because I think with body shots, with hooks to the body, those are the best thing you can do against a grappler going for single legs and double legs because you get a natural underhook. I'm out of breath. So I do think JDM will have a body shot heavy game plan, which he kind of already naturally has, but I do think he will lean more towards the body shots because, again, Belal is a very gas tank heavy guy. You need to land body shots against those guys because their gas tank's a threat. You have to attack their gas tank as well, and body shots are a big way to do that. So if JDM can attack the body throughout this matchup and not get stalled out too much against the fence or just get pressured back too much where he can't land anything, I do kind of trust him throughout this fight to have more and more success. And eventually we'll see a Belal Muhammad, not technically gassing, but a Belal Muhammad who's not as active as he typically is in the third, fourth, and fifth round. Don't think he'll slow down too much, but I do think he'll slow down enough to where we can see a really competitive fifth round where we have Belal stalling against the cage, getting takedowns, but JDM getting back up to his feet, landing body shots, landing some combinations here and there, and it becomes a very competitive fight. But can Belal Muhammad go out there and just take down JDM and control him for 5 rounds? It definitely is possible. That's the best way he can win. Obviously, getting him against the cage and then taking him down or just stalling him against the cage is a good game plan versus any fighter if you're primarily a grappler because it prevents somebody doing damage to you. And if that's the only thing that happens in the round, then it gets very murky and just it becomes, you know how these fighters work. Marab did against O'Malley. Belal has done it against Edwards. Like shit like that can happen. But Edwards for Belal was, I think, more clear and a way less of a stalling of a fight than the Marab O'Malley one. However, doesn't matter, or it kind of does. Obviously, Belal can go out there and do some work with the grappling and stalling out this fight. But I think I'm going to lean towards JDM by 48-47 split decision. I think there will be a round in there where everybody debates. They're like, nah, JDM won that. He did more damage. And there'll be people who say, oh no, Belal won that because he had more control time. JDM was on his back for a while. There wasn't enough damage to discern something. Like, I think there will be a round in this matchup where people are heavily debating who won that round, which decides who won the fight. I'm going to take JDM. I think that the judges will get it right this time. And if it's a close fight where there are debatable rounds, I do think the UFC and the judges will lean towards damage. JDM just is a more fun fighter than Belal. He will potentially get finishes in the future. He has way more, I think, amped up matches. I think him versus a Shaft Cat would go crazy. I think it would sell, not a crazy amount, but it would sell something. There just is more potential, I think, in JDM and his fight style to do more for the UFC. Now, Belal can kind of combat that with the way he talks. Sometimes he can make fights interesting by how he talks, but I think we all kind of know that Belal will talk some trash, but it won't really amount to him getting a finish in the UFC because he hasn't had one yet, right? My fault, I forgot he finished Sean Brady, but like that was by standing TKO, where it was very like he didn't even knock down Sean Brady, and Brady wasn't even hurt that bad. Like he was hurt pretty bad. It wasn't like anything crazy. So like he has some finishes in the UFC, but I forget the stat that everybody says about Belal. He does have 18 fights in the UFC and only has 3 by finish. The rest are by decision. So it's kind of, he has 1 sub against Takashi Sato. And then what? What was the other one? Other finish he had? He lost to Luque. Augusto Montano back in 2016. He won by ground and pound in round 3. So, like, even his finishes aren't anything insane, right? Like the Sean Brady TKO was pretty nice, but it wasn't really that exciting because it was just Belal just throwing punches and Brady couldn't return anything back. And then the Kashi said a rear naked choke, whatever. Like Belal just is a hard man, and it's a very difficult thing if you're in the UFC and you can't really finish anybody. If you have this low of a finish rate, I do think the UFC will lean towards picking a guy who possibly can get KOs. You know what I'm saying? So I am just going to take JDM by very, very, very close split decision, 48-47 against Belal, where he wins like the second and third round, loses the fourth, and in the fifth, it's very, very debatable of a round. Like very, very debatable. Where the dog comes out in him. He lands a nice few hooks on Belal. Belal maybe gets him down maybe for like a minute or something. And it's just a very, very close round that's debated on the fact that who did more damage. I do think that people will agree that JDM did more damage in that fifth round, and therefore he wins the fight. Very, very close fight, though. That was me trying to be as unbiased as possible. That's just, yeah, I think we're going to see Belal lose his belt here. Maybe he does win. It wouldn't surprise me if he won, by the way. Like, I wouldn't be like, oh my God, Belal won this fight. That's crazy. No, I think he has a very, like, if I had to put odds on it, I would say, like, honestly, in my humble opinion, I would say this fight is like 53%, 47% for in favor of Belal. Like, if this fight happened 10 times in a row, if you just repeat this fight over and over again, you go back in time after the fight ends, I do think that Belal would win 6 times out of 10, while JDM would win 4 times out of 10. So I guess, in my opinion, I'm going to believe in the universe where JDM wins, right? Out of the 4 times out of this 10 fights that happens, I do think that in this universe, one of those 4 will happen this Saturday. So I'm taking JDM finally by decision. If you agree, disagree, hate my pick, love my pick, whatever you want to think about my pick, I don't care. Comment down below. But I'm out of here. Like, subscribe, bell icon notifications. I'll see y'all later. Peace.